Edwin Thompson is on the line. Edwin, again, thank you so much for giving us some time tonight. And Bill, thank you for calling in.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
I've got some questions that were sent in. I'd like to just ask you real quick.
Can I finish answering Bill's
question? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
First, I just want to say, Bill, you ask wonderful questions.
Thank you.
And about space travel and mining asteroids. I believe that privatized space travel and the entrepreneurial business model will be the new wave of science fiction turned into modern-day science fact. And space travel is expensive. So one of the best ways to pay for space exploration is to get out there and mine something that's valuable. And I think that will be our new success in space venture, will be to travel to asteroids. I think it's a little spooky because, asteroids are out there drifting around in a perfect balance that we have a tendency to mess with nature as humans and then deal with the outcome later. But I also think that it would be a wonderful way to fund future space travel and get us farther away from this planet. If we keep sucking the life out of planet Earth the way we have been, we're going to need someplace else to move to in the future.
Well, what's interesting? You had last year, you had the Rosetta's Philae probe land on the comet, and I think that mission itself, it took almost 10 years for it to catch up to the comet and actually land that probe on there. And the thing is, if it takes that long to do that, I can't imagine. I don't know what the difference is of the speed or trajectory, or as far as what is the difference between the comet and doing this feasibly with an asteroid itself and taking it in and taking those elements. And I don't know what kind of technology they're thinking of doing as far as, taking that stuff back to Earth. You're talking about a large scale, but you know what it is, Edwin? When there's money involved and there's a profit to be made, these private companies are going to go full bore when they know that there's a dollar tag or whatever attached to it.
Just look at the testing.
Exactly. Yeah. And I just want to ask you one more question, because this always makes me think about, because I have, you see on NASA's site, you have all the trackers about the meteors. How much would you put a percentage of the ones that are unknown, that we're not aware of, that is out there? If you had a percentage to put a number to it, as far as what we know and what we don't know.
Well,
potentially impactful to Earth.
We've got a new satellite up there that's mapping all of the asteroids. It's a phenomenal thing to witness on the NASA website. And they are rapidly discovering thousands of asteroids that we didn't even know existed just a couple of years ago. And so you should look at that map. It's very impressive. Now, as far as the random maverick asteroids that are traveling on elliptical orbits, that are doing near-miss passes through our solar system, and passing between the Earth and the Moon, nobody knows the answer to that question. There are a lot of planet killers out there, and I've lived many years knowing that it could happen any day, but it's been many years and it hasn't happened yet. Chelyabinsk was a real close call. Like I say, if it had come straight down, they estimate it would have killed at least 2 million people.
Wow.
They also estimate that the asteroid that created the meteor crater in Arizona, northern Arizona, came down at nearly a 90-degree angle, straight down. Not quite, but close enough that it hit the ground at cosmic velocity. And so that's when you get a crater-forming event. But I can't really answer that question. I don't think anyone can.
Yeah,
but,
that's understandable.
Like I say,
and even if an object hit the ocean, of an immense size, the tsunamis and the effect that it would cause also catastrophic damage on the coastal section.
There's actually a team of scientists that are right now working on trying to figure out which tsunamis that were recorded thousands of years ago in Japan were associated with earthquakes and which ones may have been meteorite impacts in the ocean.
Wow.
Because Japan has recorded tsunamis for quite a long time. There are monuments on the hillsides showing how high those tsunamis struck land and when. And those monoliths go back several thousand years. And so it's pretty interesting. They can actually figure out where the earthquake occurred and when it hit landfall in North America, and then when it hit landfall in Japan. It's pretty fascinating science.
Now, I was one final thing before I leave you guys. I was checking out your website, etmeteorites.com, I believe it is.
Yes.
Now, are you going to be make it available for people to purchase meteorites on your site? I mean, is that? I know it's a work in progress. I'm looking at it, but is that going to be a place where people? Do you have them in your possession, or you have avenues where you know of individuals or groups that have possession of these? And are you going to be making them available for sale?
I do. I've never had a real powerful online presence. My son manages that website, and I have lots of meteorites in inventory. He just needs to get them on that website and offer them for sale.
Okay. Sounds good. Edwin, it was an absolute pleasure to speak with you tonight, and I enjoy speaking with you and everything that you're doing. And Pat, thank you for the opportunity to give me a few minutes to speak with Edwin. And you gentlemen, have a great night. I'll be listening to the rest of the show.
All right, Bill, you too. Thank you for calling in as always.
Yeah,
have a good night.
Bill.
Take care. Good night.
Bye-bye.
We got a couple questions sent in. Let me go ahead and post them up to you, Edwin. Then I want to talk about I want to give you some time to talk about your new book and some other things. Sky from the Ohio area writes and says, does Edwin think that it may be possible that the so-called blood rain could come from a meteorite?
Yes.
Okay.
The simple answer to that question is yes.
Okay.
There was an event in Canada a number of years ago where a carbonaceous chondrite came in over the snow. When it disrupted, it powdered. And all that was found was micrograms of dust on the surface of the frozen snow. And if an event like that were to disrupt higher in the atmosphere and then get caught up in some sort of a weather event, you could end up with meteoric dust coming down in raindrops, just like a tornado picks up frogs out of a pond and drops them 50 miles away on dry land.
So it is possible.
Yes.
Another, and matter of fact, you answered. Rich wrote in and said wanted to know if he had two questions. One, are meteorites radioactive? He answered that by the ones you've seen, no. And his second question is, do you know of anybody that has ever taken these precious gems and made jewelry out of them?
Yes.
Okay.
There are actually a number of people that have based their living on meteorite jewelry. There's a few high-end jewelers in New York that are making wedding rings out of Gibeon, beautiful fine octahedrite, an iron from South Africa. But there's a company called Starborn Creations, and he's a young fellow that got started probably 25 years ago with amber, and eventually started having amber made into jewelry. And then, he and I had met. He was fascinated with the meteorites, and he thought, wow, I wonder if I could make jewelry out of that. And now he's just got a huge business. He does shows all over the world, and he's got retail outlets all over the country, and he's got a team of employees that do various shows here in the U.S., and I'm sure he's got a website, but Starborn Creations is the name of the company, and they make all kinds of meteorite jewelry. The science community literally despises
I could imagine.
wonderful treasures made into jewelry. But then again, I know scientists that wear meteorite wedding rings, and I know scientists that research meteorites that also wear them around their necks. And so it's an expression of passion for something that is wonderful and rare and fascinating. And, there's plenty of rare meteorites for the research teams to look at. They're not as worried about the more common material that's being fashioned into jewelry.
Another question is, this comes from Red, who's on the other side of the pond, and stays up late and listens to us all the time on the Saturday and the weekends. Red asks, what are the most desirable / expensive types of meteorite based on composition?
That's an easy answer. The most rare and the most valuable are the lunar meteorites and the Martian meteorites. And I believe that a lot of that value is generated by the collectors, the zeal to own pieces of those planets and to know that they are, in fact, confirmed pieces of the Moon and Mars. But also, they have such tremendous research value that the science community lends credence to the value of these meteorites, and it just makes them that much more difficult to afford. A certain amount of the value is just plain good old-fashioned greed, but it is a matter of the law of supply and demand, and there aren't a lot of lunar and Martian meteorites out there to go around. So if they were to get unusually popular here in the near future, you wouldn't be able to get one.
Gotcha. Here's now, you've mentioned this a couple of times, and here's my question to you. People, of course, the Martian meteorites, the lunar meteorites that are found here on the Earth. How in the heck, Edwin, does a rock get off of Mars and end up on Earth?
Well, typically from meteorite impact on Mars or the Moon. If you have an asteroid rocketing at our Moon at either orbital or cosmic velocity, and it hits the Moon at a low angle of trajectory, it's going to eject a sizable amount of lunar surface soil out and away from the Moon. And the Moon doesn't have a tremendous amount of gravitational pull. And so if it gets jettisoned hard enough, fast enough, and far enough, well, then it's just drifting around in the vacuum of outer space until it gets caught up in some other planet's gravitational pull, and down it comes. And that's what happens. There was a meteorite that fell in Morocco year before last, and it came from Mars. It was knocked off the surface of Mars an estimated 6 million years ago, and eventually it found its way to Earth, and it fell in a witnessed fireball. A number of the people that got their very beginnings with me many years ago on one of my early trips to Morocco were out there either buying meteorites from somebody, or they were just outdoors hunting meteorites at the time, and actually witnessed the fireball, got over there within a day, and started picking up pennies from heaven.
Wow. And
that particular meteorite typically sells right now for $1,000 per gram.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, if you, just for the sake of the conversation, if a person comes across a meteorite, and it's interesting, looking back through my lifetime, I've done a lot of camping. I'm not a Utah native, but I've done a lot of camping here over the years. Back when I grew up in Chicago, I used to do a lot of camping out in rural Utah. And I remember more than once or twice in my life hearing something whiz across the sky and then thump out in the distance.
Yep.
If a person, if you're out and you see something, you hear it whiz across the sky and thump, and you go find this round meteorite that's kind of like some of the ones on your page or whatever, what is something like that worth? Just a ballpark.
Well, if it's the size of your fist, and it is in fact a fresh fallen, witness fallen meteorite, it's worth probably $8,000 to $10,000.
Wow.
Something the size of your fist is going to be around a pound. It's 454 grams at roughly $20 to $25 a gram. Works out to about $8,000 to $10,000.
Wow.
And that's taking into consideration that it's an ordinary chondrite, but it's a witnessed fall. you saw it come down. Let's say 300 other people saw the fireball or heard it, and you managed to recover it. But typically, if a meteorite coming in is large enough to put material on the ground, it's going to be an event that will light up 3 states in North America. I'll see it here in Oregon. Shortly thereafter, you'll see it in Utah. And you'll be able to go outside tonight and read a newspaper by the light of that fireball for about 30 seconds. And it's going to shake the ground and break windows just before it lands. And that's the kind of event that typically puts meteorites on the ground. There aren't very often small sneakers. There are meteoroids on, winter nights if you're out stargazing in a sleeping bag, standing there with your telescope, or you're out on a beautiful summer night, you're camping and you're in the wilderness where the skies are really dark and you see those meteoroids coming in. Every once in a while, you'll see one large enough that you'll actually hear it. And you'll swear you're hearing it as it's happening. Well, you are. It's what we call electrophonic sound. It's transmitted at the speed of light by the light that's emitted from that fireball. And it's broadcast by whatever you're standing up against. So if you're laying on a picnic table or you're up against a hillside or you're on a golf course playing golf and you see a major fireball and you can hear the popping and the crackling and the hissing as it goes by, typically it's being broadcast off of a metal building or a cyclone fence that acts as an antenna and allows you to hear that sound transmitted at the speed of light, so you're actually hearing it while it's happening. And it's rare to see an event like that, although it does happen, and for some weird reason it seems to be happening a lot in the last 2 years. I get fireball reports every day now, and they're typically confirmed by dozens, if not hundreds of people. And value is relative. If you were to go out camping and find the first North American lunar meteorite, Pat, well, that's a lottery ticket. If it weighs 2 pounds, you've just found, $100,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. I can see why people spend time and put a lot of dedication into it to go find these things.
Well, there are a number of people, it's one of the reasons I've decided to write science fiction novels, is because the competition is now overwhelming. When I first started doing this, there were 6 meteorite dealers in the world. And now there are easily 600.
Yeah.
And the internet has shrunk the world, and now people that I trained in various countries around the world, from Argentina to Morocco to China, are competing with me. They were hunters 15 years ago, 10 years ago. Now they're dealers. And so the pie, which hasn't gotten that much bigger, is being sliced up into much smaller slices. And I thought to myself a couple of years ago, what would you do if you couldn't make a living off of meteorites, which is what I've done for the last 30 years. And I've always loved to write, and I've got a wealth of stories to work with from a lifetime of international travel. And so I just decided, okay, I'm going to write. I'm going to document with a lot of lies some of my past experiences and some of my fantasies, and it's been a lot of fun, and it's a great way to carry on this lifetime legacy of being a meteorite hunter.
A rock hound, yeah. A rock hound from space.
A space rock hound,
Space rock hound. Another question for you, 2 quick questions, then we're going to talk about your new book. It's Red writes in again, says, Edwin, can these objects actually leave burn marks when they land due to the heat they have to endure?
No. Now, if it makes it to the ground at cosmic velocity, yes. It's going to fuse the ground. It's going to turn Earth to glass. But you're not going to want to be within 1,000 miles of that event. So
right.
That's the only case where that would happen. Typically, when meteorites fall to the ground, they've been falling out of the fireball for a matter of time with a rush of cool air around them, well intended, and the meteorite is just dropping to the Earth at roughly a 45-degree angle. And by the time they make it to the ground, the hot surface is gone, and that 200-degree interior has taken over. You're in more danger of being frozen to that fresh fallen meteorite than of being burned by it.
Really?
Yeah. You don't really want to run over and pick up a meteorite that just fell out of the sky. You'll lose the skin on your fingers. It's like picking up a piece of dry ice.
Right. Put a garbage can over it, sit on it, wait till it warms up, and then take it and run in.
Well, ideally, you go into the house and you get a Teflon spaghetti sauce spoon, and you run outside and you pick it up and you gently lay it in a Pyrex bowl, and then you call the nearest research laboratory and say, hey, guess what I got? And just a little plug, we've created a meteorite identification research laboratory here in Portland at Portland State University called the Cascadia Meteorite Laboratory, and they are constantly classifying and identifying specimens for people all over the world. It's just absolutely wonderful. And it was a dream child of mine 15 years ago, and then 10 years ago we started it, and now it's taken on a life of its own, and it's just growing in leaps and bounds.
Wow. Very interesting. I can't pronounce the name of this, and this is the last question from me. The dinosaur killer in the Yucatan Peninsula. The chicks, I can't even pronounce it. Cicix. That guy.
Chicxulub.
That guy.
Yeah, Chicxulub. Uh-huh.
Was that, do you believe, with all your research, do you believe that was the catastrophic event of this world?
It was one of many. There are a lot of different explorations, mass explorations, extinctions throughout time, starting, 600 million years ago, and then again 450 million years ago, and then again 120 million years ago. But it is one of the strongest theories of the dinosaur extinction that occurred 65 million years ago, was that meteorite impact, the Chicxulub crater on the Yucatan Peninsula. And, but, there are scientists, there are paleontologists out there that believe that it was a virus. That's a difficult question to answer in a nutshell, because there are still dinosaurs alive today. So why did those particular species survive? Sturgeon, crocodiles, duck-billed platypus, alligator gar. There's all kinds of creatures alive today that existed during the time of the dinosaurs.
Right.
150 to up to 65 million years ago. But there's no question that meteorite impact and that impact crater was devastating to life on Earth, and that it wiped out probably entire species, and it changed the climate of planet Earth for a long, long time.
Yeah, interesting. Just choked everything out, like you said. It just it wiped it all out.
Right.
All right.
I think.
Go ahead.
The people in the northern reaches of North America are realizing that we could be thrust into an ice age in the next few years.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a meteorite impact.
Oh, I agree with you. Let's talk about, you sent me a lot of information, and I want to thank you again, all the details. Writing. Now you're let's talk about your book that just came out, and of course it's called Earth Under. Something you wanted to do, Edwin, all along? I mean, you've seen so much. Let's talk about the book and your desire to write and science fiction and everything.
Well, the inspiration came from an experience on my first journey to Africa as a 19-year-old kid. I lived over there for 4 months, and it really changed my life. It was a virtual Siddhartha experience. It was the early 70s. The Arab terrorists were kidnapping athletes in Munich, and there was a coup, an attempted coup on King Hussein's life there in Morocco, and I was just this naive kid that wanted to see Roman ruins in North Africa. I wanted to dig fossils. I wanted to try to teach people to keep an eye out for meteorites, and I had experiences that have haunted me ever since. And I've always aspired to write. This has been a really, really wonderful and rewarding experience. It's been very flattering, and I've always been a sci-fi buff. I've always worked in the sciences, and it's very easy for me to write. And so I can just sit down at a computer and with Google and spell check, I can make almost no mistakes, and just let my fingers do the talking. And it is so much fun. And so it complements the other things that I do in my life. I get to live my passion. I get to live my bliss. I broke the mold many years ago and just went chasing after a dream. And, I really get to have so much fun, it feels like a sin. And the writing is just another way to express myself. As I said, I'm inspired by people that do so much more than me. You look at somebody like Steve Martin, who's a wonderful and well-known comedian, but he's also a musician, and he's a playwright, and he acts in plays, he acts in movies, he's an artist, he does all these amazing things, and you end up thinking, well, where does he find the time?
Right.
But I'm inspired by people like that, and I just decided, this would be fun. I don't have a journal that I can fall back on so that all of my facts would be correct. If I wanted to write, if I wanted to document the last 45 years of my life, I couldn't, because I wouldn't get it right. And so I thought to myself, well, the next best thing is just to lie, basically, to write a book of lies, to tell tales, to be a storyteller, and use my life experiences for the material that I need to let my imagination go. And so it's so much fun to do, and I hope that people like it. I really do. I'm like anyone else. I have an ego, and I have emotions, and I would really love to be accepted as a writer, and I really want to entertain people. It is fun for me. I want it to be fun for other people and to be entertaining. So this is my first attempt, and it was a lot of fun. I'm well into book 2, and I'm committed to a series. So hopefully it'll be something that people will remember me by long after I'm gone.
Can you give us a little overview of what Earth Under the Meteorite Chronicles is about? Just kind of a high level, and of course where people can get it, but maybe just a little synopsis.
All right. Well, it's available everywhere. It's at Amazon. It's at Barnes and Noble. It's showing up in bookstores and in libraries. It starts with an adventure to the edge of the Great Sand Sea, and it's a young man on an adventure to recover meteorites, and he gets wrapped up in the greed and the conflict and the deceit of the real world, and then eventually gets saved by apparent friends that turn out to be his best friends in time, and he goes on this wonderful journey around the world. It starts, as just an everyday surface of the earth adventure that turns out to be a trip into the cosmos and other worlds, and outer space as well as inner space, and there's love, there's treachery, there's danger, there's deceit. It makes me smile just to think about it.
Well, I can tell the passion in your voice.
Oh, thank you.
You know, and obviously the passion, not only in your voice, but the passion that you've had for so many years doing what you do. I mean, it's talk about it's a science that you've created. I mean, not I shouldn't say you've created, but you've been a big part of creating, teaching people how to find these things and how to discern what's real and what's not real. And again, your life is traveling all over the world is got to be amazing. And again, seeing the different things that you've seen in your life, your notes definitely hit home for me. Seeing people living on the street and seeing people going to bed hungry, and it's one of those things that a lot of us don't think twice about. All right, everybody, welcome back to Fringe Radio. Our guest tonight is Edwin Thompson. You can check out his website at etmeteorites.com. And, of course, we're talking about his passion, his writing endeavor, his new book that just came out in January called Earth Under, The Meteorite Chronicles. Do you have a website for that as well, Edwin, for the book?
Yes, I do. It should be linked to the ET Meteorites website.
Okay.
And it's also linked to my publisher, Inkwater Press.
So you can go ahead and if people go take a look at your website, they can pop over there and grab a book as well.
Sure.
Interesting. What's the next book going to be? Is it going to just be a continuation with the characters that you've created in the first one?
Well, book 2 gets pretty wild. It's called Thunder Sky, and I kick it up a notch, so to speak. I'm having a lot of fun with it, and it gets wild and crazy. Book 3 promises to be even crazier. I'm hoping to get 9 books out of this series, and get seriously buried in science fiction. Right. I'm really having a lot of fun with this, and the feedback from people thus far has just been absolutely mind-blowing. So if people really enjoy it that much, I'll be that much more motivated to continue to kick it out as best I can. And, I'm having so much fun with it. How can I not want to do this?
Sure. Have you ever thought about in these books, is the meteorite concept going to kind of chime through all of them?
Yes, more in some than others. There are a number of different threads through the storyline, and there's a certain educational value in the books. There's a certain amount of storytelling. There's also a certain amount of real science, and then there's all the other elements that make a good story. But the meteorites will be a big part of this series, and as will be other events, fireballs, other strange things falling from the sky, and then of course there'll be plenty of treachery and deceit and drama and romance and everything else.
Are we ever going to see an alien pop out of one of these rocks?
Oh yeah, I promise.
Let me ask you. You're one thing. Looking at your work, a movie that comes to mind. One of my favorite movies is the Andromeda Strain, made back in the 70s. Where a satellite gets contaminated and crashes, and of course it's not like the typical alien eats people's heads off or pops out of their chest or whatever, but it's the alien the simplest of life forms that starts to take humanity out, and obviously is captured in a lab but is kind of growing out of control. Is, in your estimation, above and beyond science fiction, is that possible? Do you think that someday something could fall to this planet? Maybe not intelligent, if you will, something as simple as a meteorite that falls to this planet that carries something on board with it that could wipe out civilization or do, maybe not wipe it out, but do some serious damage?
Unfortunately, Pat, my answer to that question is yes. When a meteorite falls, the exterior is basically sealed in glass. It melts. The interior is still frozen. There's no damage to the interior. It's still the temperature of space. And so anything that's been preserved in that rock throughout the vacuum of outer space, and there's basically nothing that preserves better than cryogenics. So if a meteorite has been frozen at the temperature of space, which is basically absolute zero, for billions of years, but it has drifted from some contaminated parent body, and now it falls to Earth in a violent fireball, well, it still hasn't thawed out when it made it to the ground. It just encased in a fusion crust of melted stone.
Right.
And just like that halite in Zag that held tiny, less than 1 millimeter diameter cubic inclusions of 4.5 billion-year-old water, well, the same thing could happen again, only the water could have some nasty contaminant in it. Or it could be a piece of ice that falls to the Earth, makes it all the way to the ground, and then it thaws out, and we've got a nasty critter crawling around on the surface of the Earth. There are a lot of scientists out there that believe that that's how life got here originally, was locked inside of meteorites or cometary ice. And so, I would have to say yes, no doubt. And again, it's only a matter of time before we see something like that again.
Have you ever, in all your years of doing this and handling these things, have you ever? The excitement of it's got to be. It's like anything. I think as humans, we have that emotion. We maybe touch before we grab onto something before we even think about it. But in your years of doing this, have you ever grabbed onto something or picked up something unique like that and go, maybe this isn't such a good idea to even be touching this thing?
Well, I'm more concerned about preserving what might be there than I am about harm to myself. There is a huge amount of excitement when you walk up on something, and there's just unlimited thoughts going through your mind, the what ifs. And I've seen some really strange things in my life. I've been to fireball events. There was a fireball in Oregon in 1987, and this is a perfect example. It entered the Earth's atmosphere over British Columbia. It was witnessed by people in Seattle, in all of Washington State. It was seen all the way into Nevada and Northern California, but it came down over Central Oregon, and it disrupted over John Day, right in the center of the state. It happened at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Friday in October. There were people out golfing, people mowing their lawns, people playing football, and people from central Washington to central Oregon hit the deck because this thing, it was so loud, it was followed by so many sonic booms that Vietnam vets thought it was the end of the world, and they hit the deck. It was a daylight fireball. It was huge. So witnesses in Dayville, John Day, and other areas swear they saw this thing change direction from screaming in at entry velocity, which is roughly 15 miles a second, which is roughly 50,000 miles an hour. And it just reversed, went back the other way. Well, there are scientists that think that was an optical illusion. But then after this happened and it disrupted, there were people that reported 10 to 20 ground-shaking explosions, sonic booms.
Right.
Well, typically when a meteorite comes in like that, it creates 1 or 2 sonic booms, not 20. And there are other people that swear they saw this thing being followed by another illuminated object, a craft, that fired on it. Well, that would marry with the sounds of multiple explosions. And I was there within days of the event to that area. And I've spent probably 6 months of my life over there. I've gone over there archery hunting with friends and spent the entire month of September while they're out bow hunting. I'm basically walking around with my eyes to the ground. And in 6 months to maybe a year of my life, I used to take the kids over there for fun camping trips, and we'd spend a long weekend, and we'd do all kinds of fun things. But the theme of the trip was to hunt for meteorites. We never found anything. And the day I got there, 3 days after the event, people in Dayville said, oh, there are all these white government trucks that showed up. And I got up onto these open meadows in the woods. You go to the open areas first because that's where you're going to find something that falls from the sky. And there were footprints and tire tread marks everywhere. So large numbers of people had been up there and canvassed that area in the 3 days before I got there. And I get there and there's nothing. The only thing I saw was footprints and tire tracks. Typically, you go to a fireball event, if you spend enough time there, you're going to find meteorites. Yeah. But I always wondered, well, what in the world was that? Why didn't I ever find any meteorites? In fact, my son and I are going to go back over there again this spring, early summer, and spend some serious time hitting just one last area, thinking it may have gone farther south than anybody thought. But a lot of the people that saw that event are now gone. They're passed away. And a number of the scientists that worked on that event are now gone. And so, it's something that just kind of got swept under the rug. And I've seen strange things with meteorites. I had a carbonaceous chondrite, 25 years ago. A real rare one, very unusual, rare type of carbonaceous chondrite, and I broke it open. I broke it in half rather than cutting it, because when you cut something, you get cut loss. Mm-hmm. But this was so valuable and rare that I decided to break it with a rock chopper instead. So I popped it in half, and it scared me when I did that because, I was nervous about losing material. And so I left it overnight. Once I popped it in half, I said, okay, that's enough. I'll do more later. And I left it there on a sheet of clean paper. I went back to it the next day, and there were these white, little worm-shaped crystalline formations growing up out of the broken matrix on both sides of the stone. Well, I've had scientists estimate that it might have been dolomite, or, it was this or it was that. But whatever it was alive. It grew out of that stone. It was as if it was living rock. And, you see something like that can't be explained. It really sets your imajitation in motion. And so I have a lot of things like that to work with in writing books.
No, well, as I said, just all kidding aside, you never know when you cut into it what it really could be. How many meteorites, Edwin, over the years? How many have you collected? Just ballpark.
Oh boy, myself personally picked up off the ground.
Yeah.
It would be in the thousands.
Wow. And
there was something I wanted to say, Pat. Earlier, you had touched on something that I really wanted to mention.
Sure.
In my lifetime, I've handled tens of thousands of meteorites. I've managed to get a number of really valuable research specimens into the hands of scientists at most of the major institutions around the planet. And I just have to say that virtually every one of those stones or irons was found by somebody out camping like you do up in the Wasatch Range or wherever it is that you like to camp. Most of them were neophytes. They were rank amateurs that had no clue of what they were picking up off the ground, but it stood out. It looked odd to them, and they just had to take it home. And then they watch a TV program on Discovery Channel, or they hear a program like this on the radio, or they read a book like mine, and they go, I wonder if that's what it was that I found out there on the edge of that lake when we were fishing for bass last week. Or, great-granddad's had it on the mantelpiece for the last 50 years. And so, as I've gone through the years and I've handled all these wonderful specimens, yes, a lot of them are recovered from witnessed events. But a lot of the finds, a lot of the old falls from before recorded history that are found by farmers in Plainview, Texas, or picked up by Berbers in the middle of the Great Sand Sea, they all have a story behind them, and a lot of it is the wonderful people that find these rocks and have the presence of mind to take them home and ask somebody else what they think it might be. And eventually those specimens, many of them, have ended up in my hands. And oftentimes it's really wonderful to hear the story of how it got to me. And that's been a real honor for me, just to get to help people. And also, I've given a lot of money to a lot of very underprivileged and poor people around the world. It's changed their lives. And there are now people out there that started hunting because of my efforts that are living better than I do. They're driving a brand new car and living in a 4-story house on the Moldau River in the Czech Republic, or on the Rio La Plata in Argentina, living in a hut out in the middle of Patagonia. And, it really has been rewarding just to help so many people and have so much fun at the same time doing it. Right.
Talk about miracles from heaven that come out of the sky.
Yeah, pennies from heaven.
Amazing. Edwin, the 2 hours went way too quick. I'm going to stay in touch because I would love to get you back on in the summertime if you'd be willing to.
So, well, I can guarantee you one of these days there's going to be a major fireball event, Pat. You feel free to contact me. I'll be there.
If the phone lines are up, I'll give you a call. I've got your number. Hey, I want to thank you so much for being here and giving us some time out of your weekend and talking about your work. And good luck with your writing. Looks amazing. And again, good luck with your voyages and journeys, whatever way they take you, and everything you've done. It's an amazing life, something to be proud of, and it's an honor to talk to you here tonight.
Thank you so much, Pat. Thank you for plugging the book.
Anytime. Take care, my friend. I will stay in touch. Good night.
Hey. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.